What's up, everyone? Welcome to the broadcast. Let's get this party started. So I'm coming at you live. If you have questions along the way, be sure to drop those in the comments so I can go back and forth and make sure that I handle all the questions that y'all have for me. If you want me to look at a coin, just drop the ticker in the comments and I'll take a look at those. And let's get this party started. Remember, if you like the broadcast, make sure you actually like this broadcast and you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not subscribed already. And then if you're watching this and you see the link I posted on Twitter, go ahead and retweet that and let me know what you like about the broadcast. But looking at the market so far, obviously we've had a pretty solid dump from Bitcoin, which is bringing a good chunk of the market down. The fear and greed index is lower. We were at like 87 or something like that. We were topping out. We're at 83. So it's coming down considerably in terms of where we were at. Alts have taken a pretty big hit in terms of where they're going. There's some that have performed well. So when we come in here and we start looking around, we can see that obviously Solana went on an absolute tear. It's at 170, 167 right now. Coming back down, I think we probably tag 150 again on Sol. Doesn't mean Sol's going anywhere. It's been on an absolute it's just ravaged everything the last few days. BNB's done pretty well. When we look at AVAX, it typically follows Sol. So AVAX went on a nice move. Coming down the line, Aptos, we've had a layer one battle going on. So Aptos has pumped quite a bit. Looking at the rest, we've had Phantom coming out with some new subnets. I've noticed Andre Cronje, or however you say his name, is back. So it's up 21%. Phantom looking good. We've got Dog with Hat pumping as usual. Sui 163 did kind of well. Jupiter absolutely went insane, 50% up. I think I picked up Jupiter like 50 cents. So this one went on an absolute tear. Pyth as well. Just a whole overall Solana network kind of started just going nuts, which was kind of fun to watch. But let's look at the hot sectors as usual. We've got memes, Solana ecosystem, gaming, and AI. This is literally what the only thing your portfolio has to consist of to win in this bull market are these ones. So someone said we're puking. Let's take a look at it. I'd love to watch just a live puke. But overall, this is kind of where you want to be. When I look at it, we've got memes. In memes, I think it's important to be exposed to Solana and to be exposed to the base ecosystem. So I also think that normies or people who are kind of retail investors coming in to buy these will buy the ones that have the most zeros, like Sheeb, Pepe, Flocky, Bonk, because they're going to say, ooh, if I buy a million of these and it goes to even a penny, I can make this much money. Logically, it makes no sense, but that's exactly what they'll be thinking. Book of Meme, just absolutely insanity. Thing launched and went straight to $1 billion market cap. But overall, we're starting to see the memes kind of go crazy. One of the top indicators I was talking about previously was the memes starting to pop off, and that's exactly what happened. But overall, I think memes are something to have in the portfolio. Maybe you have you have a major, which is one of these guys, and then you have a minor, which is something that's like less than 300 mil market cap. So you come down here, you're like, oh, I want AVAX. So Kakinu is perfect for AVAX. We've got Wen, which I think is still pretty undervalued, but I think PopCap typically so far has outperformed Wen quite a bit. You got Toshi on base, which is I think is a pretty solid one. I haven't seen. I think it's going to be tough with the ERC20, the ETH shit coins, because nobody wants to pay $150 in gas when they can go down here up here and buy Toshi and pay less than a penny. So I think just be careful with ETH shit coins. Overall, though, memes are going to be part of the ecosystem. Obviously, Solana's been super hot. So we've got Solana, obviously Dog with Hat in there. I think Jupiter and Pyth are both great. Lots of things looking good. So JTO. I think what's going to happen is a lot of Solana protocols are going to start launching tokens too in terms of Solana DeFi. So we're going to see a lot of Solana stuff take off, which I think will be pretty interesting to watch. Then we've got gaming. One gaming coin that I think has a lot of potential. Obviously, Beam's pumped and gone nuts. We grabbed eGold when it was like $30. It hasn't moved too much. Echelon Prime, I think, has a lot of potential. We're sitting at a 600 million market cap. It labels itself as like an AI plus gaming ecosystem coin, which I think is actually interesting because they're saying, ooh, gaming, ooh, AI. They're taking advantage of both of those super popular metas. So I think that's one to watch out for. Illuvium, I think, will do really well this year. 400 mil market cap. We've got a lot of things like Portal Coin. There's just so much stuff in gaming that I think will do well. Pretty much you can just pick anything and it'll pump at some point. And we got AI. AI, another good ecosystem. I have a bunch of Render. I have a bunch of Tau. I think FET obviously is doing well. AKT, just you can pretty much throw the dartboard. See, there's Prime again. When something's taking advantage of two metas, that's typically going to be a pretty good idea to jump into. Ocean's kind of an older protocol, data fueled. I think that'll do well. We got Arkham, PAL, both PAL and OXO. I think those both do well. Those have gone up quite a bit. Sleepless AI is kind of a sleeper. I think it does all right. But those are the big ones. I think one of the big things you want to kind of think about is if I want to build a perfect portfolio, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to have a big cap from Solana and a small cap from Solana, a big cap from gaming and a small cap from gaming. And then I'm going to say, okay, a big cap from AI and a small cap from AI, and then a big cap from memes and a small cap from memes. And then I would throw in there the ETH ecosystem as well. So a big cap from ETH or ETH itself, and then a small cap. So ETH would be like OP, and then something smaller, but something to think about for that. Let's take a look. Someone says things are puking, so I definitely want to take a look at that. It's so much fun to watch live puking of the charts. So here we are. This is kind of the indexes. Nobody seems to care about the indexes. If you want me to look at them, just let me know and I will. But oh yeah, this is beautiful. Look at that. So the interesting thing that I actually drew a while back on Bitcoin on the weekly, I think, was I started to chart the tops based off of previous tops. And interestingly enough, the bottom one that was charted, obviously we've hit a bunch of times. We've hit here, and that kind of propelled us to start the bull market. Then we have here. This will produce some sort of this is a pretty nice support. But then what I thought was interesting, I charted the top off of this 2017 top through here. And what happened was we magically just wicked right off of that. That was the literal resistance that we needed to get past. And so I thought that was quite interesting that we actually rejected off of that exact zone. Some things to look out for Bitcoin, I think that are kind of troublesome that we're running into now is Bitcoin's daily is right on the 50. When we lose the daily on the 50, we typically have a lot more room to go down, which tells us that we're going to have more of an extended correction. So we have the 50 on the daily. We lost the 50 over here, right there on January 11, 2024. And when we lost the 50, that took us from 46 down to 38. And we wicked right off here off this EMA 100 off of the daily. So if something like that happens again, if we lose the daily, we're likely going to, at minimum, push to right here, which is about 57.7. If we can actually bounce off of that, like here, you can see we tried to bounce, rejected off the daily trend, and then push back down. If that happens, we go boom, we bounce, we try to push, we get rejected off this again, then we push down and we end up in like the 52s. If we did push down to the 52s, 51s, what that means is from the top, which is like 73,757, that puts us at about a 30% correction. So that puts us on par with other corrections in previous bull markets. So yeah, right at 30. So that would put us at a perfect 30% correction. If we somehow manage to bounce off of here, that's a 20%. So far, we've actually only put in about a 15%. So in terms of bull market corrections, this has actually been pretty mild. So I don't think there's anything to be concerned about, but it's also, remember the fact that this can go down to here. So for me, the buy zones are maybe buy zone right here, and then another buy zone right here. It puts perfect. So Bitcoin is 57.6. Bitcoin hits 57.1, and wherever alts are at those points becomes nice little buy zones to jump in on this thing. That's if we aren't able to get past this. So one thing we want to think about is we've already lost the daily trend, which is bad. And then we come down to the 4-hour. We lost the 4-hour a long time ago. We're barely sitting on the EMA 200 for the 4-hour, which is kind of our last line of hope. We're also sitting and rejecting off of the 1-hour EMA band. So as we push through today, we tried to push through it, got rejected and straight back down. So now we're either going to double bottom and test again, or we're just going to lose this and puke. So we'll see what happens at this point, but just something to pay attention to and be cognizant of, that we are potentially in a position to where we can actually puke pretty far down. And like I said, it puts us in like the low 50s if we do puke all the way down. So it's something to pay attention to, especially when we start looking on the daily. We got a lot of room to go till we get to these EMA bands. So this would be kind of like, this would be the perfect buy zone. And then kind of just look at where alts are and stuff like that based off that. But that's what I would be looking at for Bitcoin. I wouldn't say it's like super concerning. It's pretty standard in terms of what we're doing in a bull market. So it's like I said, it's not anything I'm worried about. I thought it was interesting that we peaked right there, but ultimately just be prepared for that. Like I bought a little here today, and then I'm going to buy a little here there, and I'm going to buy a little there if we go that far down. Doesn't mean we will, but these are the zones that I'd be looking for. The first big thing that would be tell me that we are probably going to hit those zones is losing this EMA 200 on the 4 hour. If we lose this, what'll happen is we'll come through, we'll try to revenge push to push through, and then we'll ultimately just come right to here and wick off of this. Then what'll happen is we'll try to push again, and if we reject, boom, straight down. We've done this multiple times. So what it ends up looking like is this chart here, where we have this kind of down angle. So we reject, we come back, we push, reject, come back, push, reject, come back, couldn't even make it, reject, come back, push, and then just keep falling down until we finally break it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and where I think where we're at. Same story with ETH. It doesn't look any better. It probably looks worse, in fact. So when Bitcoin pukes, remember your alts are going to puke significantly worse. So if Bitcoin has a 30% correction, alts are going to have like a 50 to 70% correction. So just know that they're going to puke pretty hard. Doesn't mean it's over. As soon as the bounce happens, these things come right back up. But I mean, look at ETH already. It's lost its daily trend. It's already at this zone. If it loses this zone, ETH comes back down to here to the 28s. So we kind of want to pay attention to that. I think those are the important zones to watch out for. Looking at Sol. Sol's puking pretty hard. So people are kind of capitulating. I think what happens a lot is like the moon boys and girls come in here and they start just longing 100x leverage at the top. And then when it dies, they start to puke and lose it. So Sol's sitting right on its daily trend. It looks better than Bitcoin and ETH right now. Doesn't mean it's going to stick, but this between 164 and like 155 are going to be pretty important zones for Sol to be able to hold. If Sol can't hold those zones, it's already lost its 4 hour trend. It's going to come down to this 162. If it can't hold those zones, it's going to come back down to this like 144 zone. In my opinion, like 144 is, let's go back to the daily, this 144 zone. Like if we can get anywhere from the 144 to like the 130 would be ideal. If Bitcoin can go on a 30% correction, we'll probably get somewhere between 128. We'll probably get about 120, 110 to 128 as a pretty decent buy zone for Sol. So that's what I'd be looking out for on those. When I look at what's Tia's finally alive, Tia was like, oh, look, let me just come alive, and then you get completely rejected. But APT actually looks pretty good. It's mooning. Let me check the comments. Let's see if there's any questions. If you got them, drop them in the chat. What's up? Good morning, everyone. What coins should we have and hold? Can you look at Tashi? Yeah, I'll take a look at Tashi. Should we have? Let me show you in dudes. I put all of my buys, everything in my portfolio, but kind of what I'm building right now in my portfolio is I have Bitcoin, I have ETH, I have Sol, I have Optimism. Because what I typically want is I want ETH and I want an ETH beta. So ETH and Optimism, Sol, and then I want a Sol beta. So my Sol betas are Pyth and Jupe are kind of the two Sol betas that I really want out of this. So this is what it looks like. For me, I'm biggest in Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, Optimism. I have Render. I'm building building a position in Say, Injective, Tia. These I don't have any in right now. I think these are great. ARB's probably better than LDO. Aleph, I think, has a lot of potential. It's a super small cap is kind of why I'm building a little position in it. It's also a data management protocol, so I think it has a lot of potential. I think Ordi's great. I'll pick more Ordi up, probably lower. Height, I think, has a lot of potential because it's going to challenge Chainlink. Shadow, I think, is good. Data management protocol on Sol. Jupe, I think, is great because it's going to be like the Uniswap on Sol. So I think it has a ton of potential. Illuvium, I think, has a lot of potential for games this round. Magic game on AVAX that I think has good potential. I think big time will have a lot of potential. I like Alice and Dar. They've actually been able to build and survive through the bear market. Obviously, when the Sol shitcoin, I think, is decent. Ocean Protocol, I think, looks good. Data management protocol. Sui, I like. I think it has a lot of potential just because it's new. It doesn't have a lot of price to resist against. I think Prime's great. If Bitcoin can correct 30%, we can catch Prime around 14, like 12 to 14. I think hopefully we hit the 20. First stop would be like this 20. to 18 zone. Second stop would be this 14 to 12 zone. Those would be my two buy zones. If we could catch down here, that'd be amazing. Then OXO, I think, is good in terms of AI, PAL. So that's kind of what I'd be looking at in terms of my buy list and what I'm looking at. But I think you can't really go wrong with AI. I mean, you've got Render, you've got FET, looks good, AKT, AGIX, Ocean, you've got PAL, you've got WorldCoin, Sleepless AI, you've got Aleph, you've got OXO, you've got Prime. There's a ton of good AI coins. I think when we start looking at some of the other stuff I have, gaming, we've got some decent gaming protocols. I think Citus and Mavia have a lot of potential this run. DeFi land typically does well. It's on Sol. Like I said, I like Alistar, Big Time Magic, Illuvium Prime. I think Beam is a good for a big cap. Let's take a look. Remember, none of this is obviously financial advice. I'm just a guy talking on the internet. Okay, Hashi. So I don't really typically, there's not a lot you can do with shitcoins. I mean, Tashi's been around for a while, so we can take a look at it. But in terms of memes, I mean, I think obviously Whiff will do well. I think Bonk will do well. Doge is the king of, it's kind of the Bitcoin of memes. Sheeb, Flocky, Pepe. I like Popcat a lot. I think Popcat will have a lot of potential. When I think will do well. You got Mog over on ETH. Cock Inu is kind of the top one on AVAX. Spell's kind of a meme at this point. Hashi, it's just really hard to tell. I mean, Tashi bounced off of the daily trend, so that's good. This would be nice if Bitcoin continues to die, though. You can see the RSI heading towards 50. So this thing will just keep dying with it. Meme coins typically get hit the hardest when the market starts to correct and get disrupted. You can kind of see Tashi's already sitting on this EMA 100. Doesn't really have a 200 or anything. It bounced off of it decently. Doesn't mean it'll hold. It's coming up to challenge the RSI 50 on the hourly. It's coming up on the 1 hour trend. When we look at the 4 hour, it's below the 50, so it's coming back up. I would need it to be above this and then retest and push to be able to consider this a good buy. I don't think it's a bad thing to DCA into it. Looking at everything else, I think that's kind of what I look at with memes. Let me know if there's any other questions. Let's see. If you're watching, drop your questions below. But overall, let's take a look at what's done well. So kind of just scrolling through. We've got TIA finally started pushing. APT started pushing. It's unfortunate TIA decided to push when Bitcoin's absolutely dying. We've got OP. I wouldn't call that a push. STX, all these things tried to move. And pay attention to this. This is something to pay attention to on the market. When the market starts to push and you start to see things go green, you pay attention to that because that's going to be a coin that potentially is going to push hard when the market actually finally starts pushing again. So maybe TIA is finally ready now to push when the market's strong. Maybe APT looks like it wants to push when the market's strong. So we want to pay attention to these top performers so that way we can take advantage of them. OP started to push real hard when the market was strong. STX typically is a good Bitcoin beta. SUI started to push 7% up. So we got a lot of things that actually pushed pretty hard. Phantom wanted to move real hard. Phantom's got the new network stuff, the upgrades and all that's going on. So things to pay attention to. We got AMP. Tends to move really hard and really fast. It's hard to long it. I think it's something you have to be in spot for. We got APT. A lot of these alternative L1s are the things that are really pushing right now. So it's kind of the narrative, and there's been some cash flow pushed into it. So stuff to pay attention to on that end. I think for me overall, the best strategy right now, and you have to remember that these kind of dumps are part of the atmosphere of crypto. If you want to be in crypto, part of this isn't just the ride up. Like this is fun. It's like, woo, oh my God, we're dying. Woo, no, woo. And then all of a sudden, okay, buy the dip. Oh shit, buy the dip. Okay, damn, I have no money left. So you want to pay attention to that. Remember, this is part of the game. Like I said, when we look at these corrections and when we look at the way Bitcoin moves, typically we can anticipate 30% corrections from big moves in these bull markets. When we look back from previous bull cycles, whoops. When we look back at previous bull cycles and we've seen the corrections that have come about, we've had one, two, technically three, maybe even four before we had that second pump. So what you kind of want to pay attention to here is this is just part of being in a bull market. So part of being in a bull market is recognizing that we're going to have corrections that from peak to bottom are about 30%. So peak to bottom, 30%. When we look at this one, peak to bottom, just 26%. So these are big corrections and they scare a lot of people. And a lot of people like sell their bags and run away crying. And then they look at this and they're like, damn, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And then ultimately, I think this one was a little bit smaller. Yeah, about an 18%, but these corrections aren't super mild. So look at this one on the top when we started really topping out. 27%. So it's like this does happen and this does get pretty gnarly. Like look at this one when we thought everyone thought it was dead. And then we kind of did nothing for the summer. Well, I can't see it. So from right here to even right there, 50%, a 50% correction in a bull market. If you go from peak, actual peak, 54% correction in a bull market. And then we basically, from May 22nd till about August, we just went sideways, months. Everybody thought it was dead. And then all of a sudden we have this magical second push. So that's what you want to pay attention to. Remember, like last time we had multiple 25, 30% corrections on the way up. We haven't experienced that yet. So if we're in this market and we're at the point to where, let's look at, so let's say we're looking at the market and we're looking at the pi cycle top indicator, which has been a pretty good indicator for the top. So it pinged and said the top was right here, which if you look at the market, getting out right there would have been beautiful. 62,000. You would have maybe missed out on that little bit. Like, who cares? I got out and I was like basically at the top. But what's interesting there is the first time when you look at the way the bull ran, the first time it actually went near this indicator, it actually rejected off and then it had a correction. So the correction here was 16%. And then it came back up, corrected again for a smaller one for an 11% correction. And then it actually went on to go nuts. So that's what we want to pay attention to. And interestingly enough, where we're at right now is we're rejecting off of the pi cycle top indicator. So with this being said, we rejected here and we had the 14% correction. And now we're up on the second rejection off of this came through. We actually rejected, fell through. And so far, our correction is like 15-ish percent. So 15.50% is what we're looking at so far. So just remember, one of the key indicators of the bull market really getting into the parabolic phase of the rally is being able to clear and hold above this indicator. This indicator usually, it's been consistently correct in terms of what and how it's called the tops. So typically what will happen is when we reject, we can see those bigger corrections. And like I said earlier, if we're at a 30% correction, that's right there at 51K. So we could anticipate something like that happening and going from my buy zone 57 down to 52, which would be a beautiful buy zone. Doesn't mean that's exactly where we're going to go. It just means that's a possibility. And so, like I said, if we turn on these indicators, it tells us, okay, right here, this could be a beautiful buy zone. And with how nasty this looks, I wouldn't be surprised. I would anticipate we get a nice bounce off of like 60K because that's going to be, it's a nice round number where people are going to put their longs and all that. You can see the wick right here, 59,245 would probably be pretty decent. So that could be even close enough to this first buy zone. But that's what we want to pay attention to, that this does happen. This is part of the bull market. This isn't anything necessarily bad. The only time we'd start to get concerned is if we start losing weekly levels. So if we come through, now this means we would have to close the weekly under. But if we start losing like 48 and if we lose between, let's say like 48, we're probably in trouble. then it starts to get a little nasty because we're losing the actual weekly levels. If we start losing the monthly levels, 41 to 36, that's pretty much over. If we lose the monthly levels, we can pretty much ensure that we're going back into a bear market. Because when we look at these ones, we actually came through and we did wick off the monthly. So that first huge correction where everybody thought the market was over, that 50% correction, we wicked off the monthly and we got wrecked. Then the second time when we went through, we actually bounced and then lost it. As soon as we lost it, that was the beginning of the bear. Then as soon as we started to gain it again, that was the beginning of the bull. So if you look at this, we gained it, went on the rally. You look over here before we kind of went on this massive rally. Over here, we actually did push through it, lost it, and then pushed and went on the parabolic phase. So that's the stuff we want to pay attention to. We want to make sure we understand that this is entirely possible. Like, look at this phase of the cycle right here. Reject, correct, and then push on parabolic. So, and that was 2019. So even when you look at this rejection off the pi cycle indicator, it puts us down here. Like, it's like a 72% correction right there. I don't think we're going to see that much, but ultimately, just remember it's a bull market. So multiple 30% corrections are part of it. They're normal stuff we can start to look out for. I don't really care what an alt price number is until I see that Bitcoin is actually in a position to where it's bottoming out and it's starting to show strength again, because then it tells me that it's time to maybe purchase and jump into alts. Thoughts about Near, Polygon, TRX. All right, let's look at those. Near. I think Near is great. It's got a ton of potential. Yeah, I mean, look at this. I mean, Jesus, just looking at the monthly, we've got a breakout right there, monthly break, which put us right there. If we look at our fib extensions, let's go to the weekly. We had a super nice breakout. We're coming up, we're retesting the daily trend. The problem with this right now is it's not going to be able to sustain because Bitcoin sucks at the moment. So, I mean, a good buy zone would be around the $5, 5.52 zone. But ultimately, I think this thing looks really good. It's primed. If Bitcoin could actually behave and not fall apart and die, I think we have the potential. I think this thing keeps running. It doesn't look bad at all. When we look at the monthly, it actually tried to push all the way through. So we've got monthly breakout, and we've got continuation. We've got it pushed through 6.86, which was, well, it didn't close above it, but it just tried to. We got 6.86, then we've got 8.76, then it starts looking at 10.20. So it looks good. I don't think there's anything bad about it. I would kind of wait to see like the 4-hour trend start to be regained and showing strength like it's tried. It's top, loss, top, lose. So now maybe bouncing off of here in the 5.58 zone will give it the strength to actually run. Polygon. Polygon's one of my favorite. I love Polygon. Polygon looks like absolute trash right now, unfortunately, just because Bitcoin's not behaving and it just didn't hold strong at all in terms of where we're at. Looking at the daily, it's lost its daily trend. It's legitimately almost down to its daily 200 day. Looking at the weekly, starting to lose structure here as well. So we're barely hanging on by a thread by the weekly weekly trend. In terms of where this is at, we're about to bounce off of the 50. This is going to determine how bullish this thing stays. For me, if it bounces off of this, it's going to be just an absolute monster of an opportunity if that can bounce. So something to pay attention to. TRX. TRX, kind of a similar story. It's losing its weekly trend. It's sitting at the 50. If this can bounce, then it's money. If this doesn't bounce, then it's going to fall through and die. Everything's just collapsing right now. So it's a terrible time to do any sort of TA. But right now it's pivotal. I mean, you could call a buy zone like 0.09 to like 0.08, and then 0.06 would be ideal. So that's kind of where I'd be at with that. Man, the market is nuking. GuildFi. Similar story. It's just starting to correct on the weekly, just like everything else is as Bitcoin collapses. Barely sitting above here on this EMA band on the weekly. I would kind of start looking for the 0.33 to like the 0.26 zone to jump in. Overall, it's losing its daily. It's just the same story amongst everything. Nothing can hold right now because Bitcoin's just on a journey to the bottom. It's going straight to zero. Super. I like Super a lot. Super. Oh, that's GuildFi. Super similar story, barely hanging on by a thread. You're probably looking at 0.90 to like 0.64 as a decent buy zone is what I would be looking at. I think it has nothing left on the 4 hours toast. Looking at the daily, just lost the RSI 50. It's toast on there. So I'd be looking down here 0.89, 0.64 as a decent two zones to be able to buy. Compete. Same story. I mean, everything just looks like trash. It lost its 50 in the RSI. It's kind of just belaboring down. It bounced off of here quite hard. So kind of watch out for this. This point through 0.03 zone would be a pretty interesting zone if it can hold that. Looking at the weekly, it's barely holding the weekly trend, which is actually stronger than a lot of coins. So if it can hold this trend, then great. And same story here. Weekly's just coming up on the 50. We would want to see this push and drive up. If it doesn't and it falls through, it's going to go on an extended correction or sit turn correct until Bitcoin can figure itself out. AEG. Wow, might be too new to even chart out. Looks the same thing as a brand new coin that launched. Comes up, finds a peak, which is this top zone, and then just sits there sideways. Right now, it's a terrible time for the coin to be able to do anything. Bitcoin just isn't cooperating with anybody. So it's just on a downtrend. I would just kind of wait and see how Bitcoin performs because it's just going to basically what we want to see is it break this that's happening right there. That's going to keep, it's going to go, push, fail, go, push, fail, go, push, fail. And just keep doing that. When it breaks that would be a good buy op. Celo and is that LRC? Celo actually was performing pretty well in the past. Okay, so just getting wrecked. Same thing as everything else, just puking, absolutely puking. So looking at this one, if I'm talking about these things and you're in spot, like who cares? Just it'll come back up. If you're in leverage, then it's obviously another whole nother issue. But we're losing the CMA band. I think it's going to push back down to the 0.90 to the 0.80, depending on how hard Bitcoin's puking. It actually looks a lot better on the weekly. Looking at the 3-day, we are coming up to test. We're going to want to see this 3-day bounce, and we're going to want to see it hold this 0.96. Otherwise, it's going to push down to this 0.78, 0.73. That would be a decent buy zone for this one. All right, Loopring. Same story. 3 days about to bounce, try and bounce off the 50. It really needs to bounce here, which is going to coincide with holding this 0.34 to like 0.31-ish area. If it loses that, buy zone is probably going to be down here in 0.27, 63-ish zone. It's probably going to be where you're going to want to look. Weekly doesn't look as bad as some coins. It's got some room to move. Weekly's going to have strong support at this 0.3230 zone. And then all the way through kind of this 0.3, 0.28 zone is going to hold strong, or hopefully would hold strong. But like I said, what I'd really want to see is this 3-day bounce off this RSI in order to see and be confident in this thing being able to continue to move up. It looks like it's moving on a decent breakout. Yeah, a lot of this is just trying to break out on the monthly. So this would be a beautiful breakout if it's held. So looking at this guy, we've got this. This is basically resistance. If it breaks that, we push up starts pushing up to the 0.50, 0.55 zone. It's got the 0.62. So it's got a lot of room to move. There's a massive monthly breakout. This is what a lot of these charts look like. Alts haven't even begun to move yet, which all tells me that we're not in a major phase of the bull market. I'm looking at Gala. It looked like it was moving like crazy, but this thing it's barely sitting under this monthly trend. It's coming up on this monthly breakout, which puts it up here in like the 0.19. So there's so much room for a lot of these things to move. I think we're in a really good position in terms of where the market's at. Yeah, you're welcome. Check ARB. I don't think I actually looked at ARB. We talked about it, but I didn't look at it. I personally like OP over ARB. I think OP is a better performer. It's been a better performer than ARB, and it's been able to outperform it. But looking at ARB, kind of looks the same. Can't look at the monthly. It doesn't even have a monthly. We've lost the 3-day 50 RSI, which isn't good, which is going to coincide with potentially losing this zone. If we lose this zone, you can see this massive wick. The ARB's going to be a good buyer, like 142. We look at the weekly, same thing here, losing the weekly trend. We don't have a lot of data, but what is happening here is it's a bounce to bounce. I would like to see if ARB can hit and drive. I think we're in a really good spot. If ARB falls through, then we're looking for an extended downtrend for ARB, or a couple of weeks to a month, maybe a little bit longer. Looking at the daily, same story. It's absolutely gotten crushed on the daily. Let's look at this in comparison to OP. So as you can see, OP's already kind of hit bottom and pushed, and it tried to push really hard today. So OP pushed straight back up, which is what we would want to see. It doesn't mean it's bullish. It just means it's pushing back up. It had a really nice push off of just getting annihilated down here. So for me, and this is why I like OP a lot better. Typically, it's a much stronger performer. And that's what I kind of look for in terms of my ETH betas. So that performer, you can see that's just this massive candle that's being printed as the daily looks like it. Our daily closes in an hour. So this would be a nice daily close. It would be a turnaround on OP, which is kind of what I'd be looking for. Looking at some of these other coins, Render, Say lost its 50 on the daily, which isn't great. INJ, same thing. So a lot of these are kind of in the same position. Just bought it a little bit high. Yeah, I mean, if you already bought it, like I have ARB and I'm not worried about it. I don't and it's spot. Like all my spot holdings, I'm not going to sell. I could care less what happens at this point. I'm just going to buy more when this thing dips and ride it up as it goes up. If I was in leverage, I would cut all positions at this point. But being in spot, it's fine. If you look at where we're at right now, ARB doesn't really have a good comparison because ARB's a newer coin. It doesn't have anything to compare it with. But if we look at let's look at an older coin. I think Alice. Oh, Alice isn't a good one. Let's go over here. Take a look at eGold. We need to be able to see the monthly. This will show the comparison of kind of where the market is. Look at this. So ARB doesn't have a chart like this because ARB has it just wasn't released in the last bull market, which means it's going to be blue skies and a lot less resistance. But looking at eGold, we thought this was big. This little movement was big. So think about what ARB's moved. Like if you bought the top, this is pretty much, say you bought the top on eGold right here, and you're like, oh, great. And then it corrects all the way back down, and then all of a sudden it's up here. That's kind of what's going to happen, I think, in this bull cycle. Buying the top right here, when you look at where the actual tip is, because that's going to be a major point for this thing to run in the bull market. And I'm not saying eGold will, but it's a 382% increase to the very tip. It's a 594% increase. So looking at just zooming out shows us that even buying the top here at 79 and holding would have put us at 542. So there's just so much more upside. And I'm not saying ARB has a comparison in any way, shape, or form to this thing, but if we even said, okay, let's say that ARB goes up 588%, just like bullshitting and having fun with it, just to show what it's like to zoom out. And this is why I enjoy being in spot, because I don't want to deal with leverage at this point and get wrecked. But spot, I can hold it and I can have a great time. But let's say ARB just goes up. Like, say you bought this tip and you're like, great, I got in super high. This sucks. My life, I just make these horrible decisions. What was I thinking? I bought at the very peak at 2.39. Let's say ARB goes up. Shoot, I need more screen. let's say ARB, this person who bought the tip right there. Gosh, it's just too big of a move. I need more screen. Let's say you bought a little high and you're like, man, this sucks. I bought the very peak at 238. Well, even if we went up, gosh, even 290, one of these days I will get this. I promise you guys. Okay, so we bought this peak at 238. And now we're like, let's say it goes up 400%. Let's say it does a 4x from here. So you buying ARB at the peak here ends up being ARB at $11. So when you zoom out, it's like, oh, who cares? Let me just buy more when this market corrects. Let me just DCA in here. So that way, when it does get up here in the $11 zone, I'm like, holy crap, good thing I held. Like all this worry was really for nothing. So when you kind of start worrying about that, just zoom out. Take a look at a coin, like an older coin that has been around for a while, and say, okay, there's a lot of room to move. And even if I did buy the top of this part, like who cares? Because the thing's got so much more room to move, and it's going to go in price discovery. So something to think about. All right, that's it. I hope you all enjoyed the broadcast. I'm going to cut out. If you like the broadcast, go into the Dudes Lab server or go into the server that you're in and give me some Elmo emojis and let me know what you liked about the broadcast. If you're watching this on Twitter, make sure you like and retweet and share it so that way more people can see what's going on in the market and help me out a little bit too. But that's it. I will talk